As we move into the final months of the year, you might be feeling stretched thin. Your calendars might be full, your energy low. This time of year is when things ramp up coming out of summer. We got all the back to school stuff. Everything's just getting busy. And I think sometimes for believers, a mistake we make is that we assume that faithfulness and busyness are the same thing. If I just do a lot of things, I'm being faithful. But often what's really happening is we're just overcommitted and we're unfocused on what really matters, pouring ourselves into the few things the Lord's really called us to. And so what happens is we let too many branches grow onto our lives, branches that aren't really bearing fruit, but are still draining our time and our energy and our focus. And so the question I want to address in today's episode is this: is it time to prune? Welcome to the Redeeming Productivity Show. My name is Reagan Rose, and this is where we help Christians get more done for the glory of God. We approach the topic of personal productivity from a biblical worldview so that you can bear more fruit in your life and greater honor God with it. And if you're new here, I'm really glad you joined us for this episode because I think this issue of overcommitment is probably nearly universal for productivity-minded believers. We just do so many different things. And my prayer for you is that this episode might open your eyes to some areas in which you are doing a little bit too much, things that might be good things to be doing, but they're actually keeping you from fully focusing on that unique stewardship that God has given you to do with your life. And this is the perfect time. As we leave summer, go into fall, it's this last chance to sort of really refocus, really ramp up our efforts and finish the year strong. So I think this is a great time to prune, and my prayer is that this episode will encourage you to do just that. And I've been thinking about this subject of pruning and commitment because we actually literally just had some trees pruned. So we have some giant oak trees in my yard. It's one of the things that attracted us to this home. In the backyard, the arborist told us our red oak back there is probably over 250 years old. I mean, it's just mad. The trunk on this thing is huge. And we have a bunch in the front yard too, really tall, giant red oaks. And these things are beautiful. And they provide shade to the house. The one in the back shades like the kids' play area, their playground, the chicken coop, all that stuff. It's just so nice. You go in the backyard, even in the heat of summer, and it's just this perfect canopy of shade. Now, the issue with these trees is the previous owner of this house had not had them trimmed, I don't know, maybe ever. So we've known this since we moved here. There's a lot of dead wood on these oaks, and the branches that are dead are humongous and they're high up. And this wasn't really an issue the first year or so that we lived here, but it has become more of an issue as some of those dead branches have decided to start falling. And so this year it's been really bad. We've had some windstorms that have loosened a lot of those branches. And so I'll come out sometimes after a storm, there'd be these huge dead logs laying in the yard. And so for a while we were just like, okay, we know this is a safety issue, but we're going to wait. We'll get to it eventually. We just won't let the kids play outside when it's windy, right? Just in case. Until this is a few weeks ago now, I walked out the front door. I think I was getting something from the car, and it was just the perfect timing. And I heard sounded like a gunshot, just this huge crack. And I looked over to the front yard, and one of the really tall oaks there dropped this gigantic dead branch from 30 feet in the air, and it just went and hit the ground and shattered into a bunch of pieces. And it was humongous. And it left a crater like in the ground, like you can see the indent of where the branch was. And I thought, man, if I'd been walking to get the mail just then, or if the kids have been outside, this is not good. We can't let this persist. So I called up the arborist and I said, hey, we got to get rid of some dead wood off these trees. Like, it's a safety hazard. And so they came out and they were looking at it. And there's a couple things that I think we can kind of press into this analogy a little bit, but they were talking to me about pruning. And so a few things I learned was, one, you should cut the dead wood off your tree so it doesn't fall and kill you. So educational experience there for me. No, I knew that part. But he was saying this is actually not the best time to prune. He said you really want to prune these oaks in late fall, early spring, because when they go dormant in the colder months. And so basically, I think what it means is the sap isn't running through them as fast. And why you want to do that is because we have here in Michigan oak wilt, which can kill these red oaks. And it's just a disease, and it can spread through the open sort of after you cut a branch off. And so he said this is not the best time to do it. But because it's a safety issue, we'll take off all the dead wood now and deal with that. But he's saying, I recommend you have us or someone else come out in the late fall, early spring and cut off some of the living branches too. And I said, well, why are we cutting off the living branches here? He said, you need to prune these trees. Just like anything. He said, some of these lower branches, they're taking energy from the tree that could go to the better branches. These lower ones are going to get shaded out. They're going to die anyway. And so you can have a healthier tree by cutting off some of the living branches and by trimming off some of the suckers that, stick off from some of the branches, and just thin it out and have it stronger and better. And I thought, man, that's really interesting, because now I'm going to have to pay again to have my trees trimmed. But more than the impact on my wallet, I thought about the impact this analogy has on the way we treat our commitments as Christians. We need to prune. We need to prune. We very often just say yes to so many things and fill our schedule to the brink until we burn out. And then we say, oh, well, then you feel like you're defeated and you're a loser and you didn't do it all right. But what I've talked about again and again on this show is the issue of overcommitment is so bad. It's just as bad as being lazy where you don't do anything, because when you're overcommitted, you let all of the busyness push out the stuff you were supposed to be doing. Do you get what I'm saying? The issue with laziness for the Christian is not just that you're not doing anything, but the core issue is that you're not doing the thing God's called you to do. You get what I'm saying? You have a unique stewardship with your life that God's called you to. And when you're lazy, the problem is you're not fulfilling that stewardship. But even when you're overly busy or overcommitted and you have all these other things you're doing, that's just as bad if what it's doing is crowding out the thing that God's called you to do. It can be the same core issue, but radically different look from the outside. And so what do we do in that instance? Well, we have to prune. And this idea of pruning is obviously a biblical concept when it's applied to our spiritual lives. I think about John 15 here. You remember this is Jesus speaking to his disciples, and he says, I'm the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. He says in verse 2, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. So every branch that bears fruit, he's going to prune so that it can bear even more fruit. And it's just like the thing with the tree. You prune stuff so that it grows better and stronger and ultimately is more fruitful. Well, the thing about pruning, whether it's in agriculture or with your commitments, is in the moment it feels like a loss, right? Especially you cut off a branch from a big tree, especially a living branch. You're like, ooh, did I kill it? Did I do something bad? When you say no to an ongoing commitment you've had for months or years, you say, I can't do this anymore. You feel like, man, Lord, am I being unfaithful? Should I have said no to that? Should I have just kept doing it? I could have done it. I could have squeezed it in. And in the moment, it feels like a loss. But in the long term, it leads to greater fruitfulness. And if you're a Christian who's trying to steward your life for God's glory, that's what you want. I want to be more fruitful. Even if it's painful in the moment, I'm going to make those choices and have those hard conversations so in the long run, I can bear more fruit for him. And that's the big principle. There are sometimes things that need to be cut away. And it's not just about bad commitments, right? We could call those the deadwood commitments. Obviously, those need to come down. They are just in the way, they're not doing any good for the tree, and they're just a hazard, right? You probably have commitments like this, stuff that you've just been doing to do, for years, and you're like, I could cut that out and there would be no impact on anybody, much less myself. It would only free up time. It's all upside. Or maybe the commitment itself is something you're like, it's actually having a negative effect on me, right? So those deadwood commitments are still hard to cut off, but you need to do it. It's a little easier decision though than good commitments, right? Even good branches need pruning. Why? Because left unchecked, they are sapping strength from what is most important. That's the point. That's the point, right? We prune even when it comes to gardening or fruit-bearing trees. And the reason is because some branches are, even living ones, they're just not doing much for the overall fruitfulness. And so if we cut them off, the finite supply of nutrients can get to the more fruitful branches. And so my encouragement to you is, as the end of the year looms ever nearer, that you would ask yourself, hey, am I truly pursuing what I'm called to? Or is my attention and my energy being sucked away to all of the busyness of life, is such that I'm missing the one thing that actually matters that I should be doing? Should I prune? Should I prune now? That's the question. And what should I prune? Because just like my oak trees have more preferable times for pruning, the fall season is the perfect time for us to reconsider our own priorities and the commitments that we currently have ourselves committed to. And as we look forward to the end of the year, the wise steward is going to ask themselves, am I faithfully pursuing what God has called me to? Or am I just overcommitted? And so that's what you need to ask yourself. If you're seeking faithfulness, now is the time to make some changes. Don't wait for the new year. Sometimes we'll be like, I'll set a goal on January 1st. And it's like, I'll just let the last 3-4 months of the year be a wash. No, fall is a natural reset point anyway, right? School's back in session. The days are getting shorter. Our rhythms are kind of beginning to shift as we come out of summer. It's the perfect moment right now to pause and reconsider before you just sort of slide into the holiday season. Proactively take a look at where your energy is going, where your commitments are. If we do take the time to prune our commitments now, I think we're much more likely to be able to enter the end of the year with feeling a little bit lighter, a little more focus, more joy, more presence, and more energy on the commitments and the people that really matter, the places the Lord's really called us to invest ourselves, and end this year on a faithful note. What would happen if you got serious about your goals right now? What would happen if you decided to really focus for the rest of the year? Well, I imagine that it would start with you pruning some commitments, you saying, I need to free up some time to focus. And that requires saying no. Because after all, focus is just the word no spelled with a few more letters. That really is it. You can't focus without saying no. And that's why we resist this whole thing of reducing our commitments so that we can focus more. We're afraid of saying no. You say, Reagan, I'm sold. I know I need to reduce my commitments. I know it's time to prune. What do I do? Let me give you a 4-step framework. You can dig deeper into this if you look up our tool called the Commitment Audit. That's just a free little worksheet we have. You can print it off. I'll link to it in the description or show notes, and you can use that. But let me just give you a brief overview. It's just 4 steps. 1, you identify. So first you identify, list everything you're currently committed to: work, church, family, volunteering, personal projects, whatever that stuff is. Get it all out there, big or small, anything that takes time or energy, jot it down. You just got to get it out of your head. It's too hard to do all this stuff in your head, so you get it on paper so you can work with it. 2, evaluate. Now, for each commitment, you're asking, is this bearing fruit? Is this helping me be faithful to my calling as a Christian, my unique stewardship in this life that God's given me? Or is it draining me without any real purpose? That's the negative side of it. You're like, this is exhausting, and I don't think it's even something God's called me to. Well, friendo, that's probably a good thing to prune, right? And so 1, identify. 2, evaluate. 3, now it's time to get out the shears and start clipping away, right? You want to cut. Number 3 is cut. Decide what needs to be pruned. Make the decision. That word decide, we've pointed this out before, the etymology of it means to cut off. Decide, side, the same suffix as homicide, right? To kill. We want to cut off. We want to kill some of these commitments. And that's hard. It's hard to kill the living branch, but recognize this is an act of faith. Pruning a commitment so that you can be more faithful in another area is an act of faith. You're saying, I believe that I'll be able to be more fruitful in this area. And so this one's got to go because I'm not God. I can't do everything at once. And so that might mean stopping something entirely. That might mean delegating it to someone else. That might be simply pausing it for the right season, right? And so that's something you can do too. If you're like, there's this thing that I know it's in the way, but I don't want to say no forever. Then don't say, hey, I want to revisit this in the new year, but I'm going to stop doing this for the rest of the season. See, so there's different ways you can approach the pruning in life that can help you manage it for the current season. But anyway, we've got to identify, we've got to evaluate, we've got cut. And the fourth one is focus. We're not just trying to say no to everything so that we have more time for the couch, right? The whole point of this pruning exercise, remember, is fruitfulness. And so the fourth thing you want to do is once you've freed up the time, now with the space you've created, you want to double down on the stuff that really matters. You want to reallocate that energy towards the branches that can bear more fruit. And this ensures that year end and life end, and when you stand before the Lord end, right, the end of ends, what you want is that you have borne more fruit. You have done more of what really matters and in His power for His glory. And that's the really important thing. You're not just doing all this stuff so that you're exhausted, but you're actually investing in the things that bear fruit for eternity. But let me leave you with a challenge and then a little invitation that I'd love for you to come to. Here's the challenge for this week. Pick one commitment, at least one big one, the one that you're probably thinking of right now as we've been talking through this, and you're like, yeah, I know I need to say no to that, but I'm too scared, right? That's the one. Pick it and just prayerfully evaluate it. That's all you got to do next, right? You're not saying you're going to cut it or not cut it. Just ask, Lord, is this really bearing fruit? Is this really what you'd have me doing? Or is it just draining me from the stuff that you really want me to be doing? That's it. Just evaluate it and then follow through with the next steps as the Lord gives you wisdom. Because here's the truth. You don't have time for everything. You're finite. You can't do it all. And pruning's going to feel like a loss in the moment, but it's actually God's way of making you more fruitful. And so as we approach the end of the year, don't just keep adding more stuff. Take some time to prune and watch how much freer and more focused you become because of that. Last thing before you go, I'd love for you to join us on September 19th for a free workshop called Your Post-Summer Productivity Reset. I think this will be the fourth time we've done it. We do this every year. And it's just a live webinar with me that is going to help you refocus on your priorities, narrow down your goals, create a plan for finishing this year well for the glory of God. It's completely free. It's all live. We usually have around 500 plus people who get to come to this. So I'd love for you to be there too. You can register at the link in the description, and hope you can make it on September 19th. Thanks so much for listening or watching. If you found this helpful, share it with a friend who might be feeling a little bit overcommitted themselves. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I'll see you next time.